The modern pursuit of pleasure, alienation and identity in society. All humans naturally share a concept of self, an awareness that is fundamental to identity. As we continue to live in a world where connectivity is essential, we may be shifting toward a new form of self-recognition. Modern society shapes identity through external validation, digitization, and the performance of self. Factors like alienation from work, commodity fetishism, and social media influence disconnect us from our true selves. The pressure to perform idealized versions of ourselves leads to a crisis of identity. Marx's theory of estranged labor states that people are alienated from the product of their work, the process of labor, and from each other. This method of extracting labor has a clear capitalist advantage, but the individual is divided from something greater than a fulfilling role. When people are disconnected from their work, they lose a sense of fulfillment and purpose. It leads to individuals seeking external validation rather than finding meaning in their work or personal contributions. To become increasingly separated creates the circumstances for a crisis of self. Modern work divides human identity into separate spheres of reality, one for productivity and the other for private life. The division forces us to adopt different roles depending on the context. When we struggle to integrate these separate identities, it can cause a fragmented sense of self in the world. We end up navigating a work-life balance that feels artificial. The modern marketplace supports what can rise to the top and steal the attention of the next potential customer. Modern marketing creates desires and feeds the constant demand our marketplaces thrive on, the constant need to be seen and noticed. The modern performance of self is driven by expressions of happiness, love, and success. People create idealized versions of themselves for public consumption, which are validated through online activities. This constant need for external approval distorts our true identities. We become more focused on how we are perceived rather than on authentic expression of ourselves. This leads to a disconnect between the self we present online and the self we experience in reality. A digitized lifestyle requires various identities to adapt to technology advancements, one for the real world and one for digital interactions. A crisis of self occurs when the external takes over for the internal performance. The external digital persona may not align with a truer real-world identity. Modern society shapes identity through external validation, digitization, and the performance of self. Factors like alienation from work, commodity fetishism, and social media influence disconnect us from our true selves. The pressure to perform idealized versions of ourselves leads to a crisis of identity. The question we must ask is how to reconnect with a more authentic sense of self in a world powered by superficial validation.